As it turns out, there are way more legendary creatures out there than we previously thought. The existence of these animals proves that sometimes humanity's wildest myths and legends are real. From immortality to regenerating limbs, these creatures have all kinds of amazing abilities that might have been considered magical in a bygone era. But there's no magic here. These animals are the real deal, and they prove that our planet is much more incredible than many of us expected. Are you ready to find out just how crazy our world really is?
More than 51 million people entering another
Surveillance camera capturing the
unidentified flying object.
lockdowns and mass testing.
Here today that the world is going to end.
Sea serpents. Legends of sea serpents are common across many cultures. Perhaps the most notable example is Jormungandr, the ancient Norse world serpent. This reptile, also known as the Ouroboros in some cultures, is so long that it can wrap itself around the entire circumference of the globe. Images of this serpent eating its own tail are said to symbolize eternity. Sea serpents also appear in the ancient Greek tale of Aeneid, and they are mentioned in the Bible on several occasions. These serpents were the original dragons of that time, feared as some of the most terrifying creatures on the planet. There are many sightings throughout the ages, although none of them were ever confirmed. But are giant serpents real? As it turns out, there's an animal that fits the description of a sea serpent pretty closely. It's called an oarfish, and you may have seen these weird marine creatures before. Known as the longest bony fish alive today, oarfish can reach the length of 26 feet. However, there are unconfirmed reports of this creature reaching sizes of up to 56 feet, with a weight of up to 600 pounds. Although this creature can't quite wrap itself around the entire globe, it's still long enough to amaze sailors and spark all kinds of legends. Oarfish are also quite rare, and they tend to hang out at depths of about 3,300 feet. In fact, oarfish die if they float to the surface, and this only happens if they become sick or injured. Although these creatures are truly massive, they don't have enough muscle mass to survive in shallow, turbulent waters. To be clear, there's nothing magical about oarfish, but they're weird enough and large enough to prove that ancient legends about sea serpents were true after all. Sea unicorns. The unicorn is one of the most well-known mythical creatures. In fact, the legend of the unicorn is said to be as old as the Indus Valley civilization, which existed more than 5,000 years ago. But as we all know, unicorns aren't actually real. During the medieval times, however, unicorn horns started appearing in fairly frequent numbers. These long, spiraled relics were assumed to have magical qualities, and they were often sold for high prices. But if unicorns aren't real, then where were these horns coming from? Enter the narwhal, otherwise known as the sea unicorn. Although these stunning creatures are 100% real, they have a mythical reputation among sailors, even to this day. They are also extremely rare, fast, and elusive, which makes a narwhal sighting a rare experience indeed. The thing is, we don't even know why narwhals have tusks. They don't seem to serve a clear purpose, although some believe that these small whales may use their tusks to hunt. Some clever medieval swindlers, including the Vikings, sold narwhal tusks to unsuspecting buyers as unicorn horns. So while the myth of the horned horse was always false, these tusks did in fact come from real creatures that are arguably even more strange than unicorns. The hydra. The mythical hydra is an ancient Greek monster with multiple serpent heads. The creature is famously killed by Hercules, who only succeeded in slaying the monster after cauterizing its headless neck with fire. The hydra also appears in Sumerian, Babylonian, and Assyrian mythology. Sounds crazy, right? Well, as it turns out, the hydra is real. While not as big or fearsome as the beast Hercules fought, the hydra is capable of regenerating in the same way as the myth suggests. In fact, the hydra can regrow itself even from a single, dissociated cell. The entire animal is just 10 millimeters long, and it is quite primitive compared to other creatures. But while it is clearly primitive, the hydra may hold important secrets for us. Scientists are currently studying the hydra to learn more about how regeneration works. Who knows? We might be able to unlock the ability to help with a range of illnesses and diseases. There's also another type of animal that has abilities similar to the mythical hydra, although it has a completely different name. The axolotl is a strange salamander that can regenerate entire limbs within a few months. In fact, some axolotls have successfully regenerated much more vital and complex body parts, such as brains, hearts, and eyes. Immortal animals. But the hydra also has another very interesting ability. It is effectively immortal. As far as scientists can tell, the hydra does not get old and it cannot die of advanced age. As anyone will tell you, there are many mythical creatures which are said to be immortal. These include vampires, the phoenix, the Leviathan, and of course pagan gods themselves. But the hydra isn't the only real animal with the power of immortality. Perhaps the most obvious example is the immortal jellyfish, which cheats death by reverting to its polyp stage. As long as these jellyfish aren't actually eaten or infected by disease, they have the potential to live forever. There's also the ever-growing lobster, which can live for hundreds of years. This animal does not age, although they typically die due to disease. Regenerating flatworms can also separate themselves into two different animals, thereby cheating death indefinitely. While not technically immortal, there are many other creatures that do not suffer from the aging process in the same way as humans, or your dog, or your cat, or, like every animal. These include alligators, crocodiles, and some turtles. Alligators cannot die from old age, instead growing larger and larger until they can no longer eat enough food to sustain themselves. This is why we sometimes see alligators that are truly gigantic.
Christy Buckley says she was in awe of this gator that crossed her path. She was taking photos at Circle B Bar Reserve in Lakeland yesterday when the alligator just passed right between them. There were several other people out there, but he didn't seem to pay any attention to anybody. And the group was 15 feet away. Look at him just saunter through.
Bondigezu. While most of us are probably familiar with the Western legendary creatures like unicorns and werewolves, it's important to remember that other lesser-known cultures have their own unique mythical creatures. A prime example is the Bondigezu, which translate as man of the forest in the language of Mani people in Papua New Guinea. For many years, the Mani people believed that there was a cryptid of sorts living in the local forests. Some said that he was a small man with a white belly and black hair, and the Moni people considered this creature to be a holy ancestor. In fact, harming the Bondigezu was strictly forbidden among the Mani tribe, while the neighboring Dani tribe actively hunted it for its pelts and other trophies. But the Bondigezu was extremely elusive, and it wasn't until 1994 that Western researchers started to take these tales seriously. Eventually, they managed to locate the cryptid, providing that the strange tales of the Mani people were real after all. However, there was nothing all that strange about this creature. In fact, it was simply a rare relative of the kangaroo. Eventually, the Bondigezu was given a new name, Dingiso. Dragons. Okay, so this one might be cheating a little bit, but bear with us here. Dragons are among the most easily recognizable mythical creatures, appearing in many medieval languages. But did they ever actually exist? No, they didn't, at least not in the way that they were described to us. Throughout history, no animal has ever had the ability to breathe fire. But what about winged reptiles? Those did exist, and some of them were truly massive. Take the Quetzalcoatlus, for example, the largest flying creature to ever take to the skies. It was the size of a giraffe, and its wingspan was 40 feet. In fact, this animal was so large that scientists still aren't exactly sure how it managed to leave the ground. The most widely accepted theory is that this pterosaur crouched before leaping into the air, giving it enough space to flap its wings. But unlike dragons, this creature wasn't exactly an apex predator. Instead, it behaved more like a giant heron, fishing for crabs and worms, other small creatures. But remember, the earliest tales of dragons depicted animals that looked more like large snakes than winged reptiles. And if you're searching the records for a truly terrifying serpent, look no further than the Titanoboa. This was the biggest snake to ever roam planet Earth, with a length of up to 42 feet and a weight of up to 2,500 pounds. But once again, this was no apex predator, as the Titanoboa most likely preyed on fish. At the end of the day, the closest our planet ever got to a dragon was probably something like a T-Rex. But here's the crazy thing. Medieval people had no idea dinosaurs ever existed. So when people start digging up the bones of these strange giant reptiles, it must have felt like the legends of these wild monsters were at least partly true. As you can see, the world has many bizarre creatures throughout the ages, and in many ways, these animals are even stranger than we could possibly imagine in our myths and tales. And because many legendary creatures have been proven real, perhaps we shouldn't be so quick to dismiss tales of cryptids, such as the Loch Ness Monster or the Sasquatch, which, as the narrator here, I was chased by Sasquatch once. Do you want to know the story? I was with 2 friends in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. There's a place called Schmeeckley Reserve. It's a reserve. It's a natural reserve. And people have said that Bigfoot lives here. So there was a tree fort, kind of like a tree observatory. And we went there on a full moon night and we were looking around and there started to be like little shadows that we could see on the ground. And we were probably just freaking ourselves out, but we're like, you know what? This isn't that great. I think we should go. So we're walking down the bark path and we're about a half a city block away from the parking lot where our car is parked. And I was in the middle and there was 2 male friends on both sides of me. And all of a sudden we heard a thump behind us. You know how a human foot would be like thump because it's heel toe? This was flat-footed. It sounded large and big and it was behind us, I don't know, 30 feet. And we all tensed up and I said, listen, if we act scared, it's going to chase us. So let's not act scared. But, ladies and gentlemen, because you'll never see my face, you can't point at me and call me a coward or a trickster. Because in my mind, I was thinking, if I can get a head start from these guys, because these gentlemen are going to run faster than I can, then I can at least get away. And you know what? I think we all had that thought because all of a sudden, whatever was behind us started running. Again, flat-footed, ginormous, huge steps running behind us and fast. None of us turned around and looked. We all booked it to the car. That's the end of the story. This happened about 20 years ago, and I still will Facebook message these 2 friends and be like, do you remember that time? And they'll all say, yes, I tell that story all the time, and nobody believes me. But I believe it because I was there. Do you have any creepy stories? Are there any mythical creatures that you think exist because it chased you at Schmeeckley Reserve or something like that? Tell us your story. That's it. Everyone, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.